If you are now just joining us, I am here with the legendary Martin Rooney, a man of many talents. He goes by Coach. He is founder and chief coach at Training for Warriors. This is our second episode. Call it, Martin, a podcast in training. I don't even know if it's a podcast, but for me, selfishly, I'm like, let's have some pretty badass conversations with coaches I know and love who share the passion for how we coach as much as what we coach. And I could not think of someone better than Mr. Martin Rooney. So thank you for joining me and us today on the Zoom call and Facebook Live. So welcome, brother.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And hey, for everybody listening, I want to wish everybody safety at this time. I hope everybody is doing good. And hey, today, Nick and I, we're going to get fired up. You're going to see my style. We're going to get very energetic. And I want to be that for everybody, but I don't want that to dismiss for 1 second the gravity of what is going on in the world right now. I don't want anybody to think that we are ignoring it, but at this time, and it's probably a perfect segue in some of the stuff. Hey, in Nick's book, guys, if you do not have this book, you got to get this book, or you don't get it. But focus. You can only focus on so many things at a time, and focus is a big part in there.
And you got to get this book, Martin. Let's not forget. You got to get this book as well, and we will be talking about both of them for sure. There you go.
If these books got married and they had a book baby, it would be crazy, right? But without a doubt, hey guys, you can only focus on so many things, and we're going to focus on the positive today and how we can make you better. But we don't want you to think for a second that we don't understand those challenges.
Yeah, but I think, Martin, what we're seeing here, prior to the COVID-19 scenario, I think you and I have talked about this. There can be a lot of negativity in the world. There can be a lot of siloing. And unfortunately, for all the good things that the internet and social media does, it does create these echo chambers at times inadvertently for negativity. But I don't know about you, seeing such an outcry of positivity from the communities within our community, within your community, and broadly, for me has been a great point of inspiration in what is a dark time for many.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this, which I think this is a perfect reason why we're speaking today. Now, you and I, we're some of only the few people that I know of that for many, many years have been talking about coaching, yes. So everybody talks about the X's and O's, obviously in your book, and that was something that really jumped out at me is everybody talks, you call it the what, right? Like, so everybody talks about the what. We want to, let's talk about programming. Hey, Martin, tell me what you do with this Olympic caliber athlete, but nobody ever asks how you do it, right? And and I think we are getting that shift, or at least hopefully we've been part of helping to create the focus on that shift. But what I think is really neat is, by everyone being thrust into their homes and becoming the teachers, aka the coaches for their children, for their spouses, for their family, and for their community. I think it has been revealed more than ever the kind of, how do I do it? Like, holy cow, like I didn't really realize the importance of this role or this job, which, by the way, you and I talked about this offline, like, this has pushed me to the ultimate levels in terms of my ability to lead and my ability to coach myself.
Absolutely.
And today I'm excited just share a lot of this. But for everybody listening, guys, you are a coach, and it's time to identify as that. But you have to also recognize that just because you had one coach in your life, or either good ones or bad ones, that doesn't mean that's the way it's done. There are always ways to get better. And again, I'll keep pulling it up. And this one, guys, is going to make you better. But I do want to start off with this, because we said it. I said it earlier to Nick. Nick Winkelman ripped me off, guys. Nick Winkelman ripped me off.
Preach. Let's hear it.
After all our time spent around the world, so guys, we have been in a lot of different countries together, had a lot of fun, talking, and then the guy rips me off. Now, you must want to know how I got ripped off, so I'm going to tell you.
Tell me again. Let's do it.
Nick says, hey, Martin, would you like to read a manuscript of my upcoming book? Which, guys, now that's a big ask, just so everybody knows. When somebody says, hey, do you want to read my book? Like, man, you can't read everybody's book, and there's only so much time that you have. Yeah. Being honest, but I said,
for sure.
But I said, absolutely. Like, I didn't even hesitate. You know, and of course, then Nick sends me this mega password protected. I did use like a fingerprint and a retinal scan and all this stuff to finally open this
DNA as well.
Yeah, and I open it and I start reading it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this thing is deep. This thing has, you know, just guys, immediately you can appreciate the amount of research and the amount of work that went into it. But I was really afraid, and you know, and I was afraid for one reason. And that was how Nick ripped me off. He didn't send me like a manuscript of what you see. I didn't get this thing, this beautiful book with like, look at these pictures and this imagery and these descriptions. So I want everybody to know. Now imagine trying to decipher this thing without one picture, explanation, nothing. And I was a little afraid. So I said, hey, Nick, like, I think this thing's really detailed. It might confuse some people. And then he goes, you don't get it. You don't know what I'm trying to go after here. You don't know what you're talking about. No, he didn't say that. But he did explain that, no, you're going to, when you see it, you'll get it. And man, when this thing came in the mail, which by the way, the postman almost broke his back. The book is so heavy.
2.5 pounds. We wanted 1 kilo. One kilo.
The guy could barely lift it. Yeah. That, man, the imagery and everything else brought it so together that if I could have really understood it, what I was seeing then, it would have, man, then I would have got it. So,
well, let me jump in here. A couple of things. One, you received your copy of the book before I did. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of solace.
Okay, I feel a little better now.
You had the book in your hands before they got it to me in Ireland. And the other thing I'll say is this, and this is an interesting footnote. You and I both know as coaches, and everyone listening, guaranteed they know as well. Some people, they got to feel it. They got to do it. Other people, you can talk them through it. Other people, they need to see something. Yeah. And in your exact statement right there, you capture the nuance and beauty of what coaching is. And for some people, they can read the words. And for you, when the words and the visuals came together and that picture echoed the words and that word echoed the pictures, it took it to another level. And I think as coaches, that's what we have to figure out. And notably, that's what makes this COVID-19 scenario so difficult, is because on either end of the screen, we can't shift the drill as quickly. We can't do the tactile kinesthetic cueing. We can't necessarily get up and be as dynamic as we always want to be, albeit I'm sure that you are on the other end of the screen, Mr. Rooney. But for me, it's a matter of language and coaching and being articulate and using our words to put pictures in their mind to allow them to move better on the other side of the screen. That has become enhanced in its importance tenfold. So my question to you, because I know every time I've talked to you, and for anyone, for Training for Warriors who's listening, and I'm sure there's many of you, every single time, whether it's been over the phone or email, the man's first or second line is about you and his community and how and what he can do to support the TFW community. And for that, man, I applaud you. You absolutely live and breathe everything you do. So for the TFW community and those in similar scenarios, what have you done to support them so that they can be in the best position to support your remote clients in this difficult time?
Yeah, well, it's been interesting for us and lucky, and for anybody listening that's not familiar with it. Training for Warriors started like 20 years ago, but now, you know, with more MMA fighters and world-class athletes, but it evolved into what it is now, and that's an adult fitness program that we've got hundreds of locations around the world. And so I hope everybody can appreciate, whether you're a member of hundreds of locations in a network or you're by yourself, this has been one of the most incredibly challenging times, in particular for the fitness industry ever. You know, I don't know of anything else that could be more challenging than global pandemic, where people are actually mandated not to be able to use a brick and mortar facility. So immediately where I started with that, Nick, was, man, I started calling all the smartest people I knew, and it's interesting because I knew I had to coach everybody up before I, to create a connection, right? Yep. And to communicate before I could ever lay out the game plan. And in order to build that trust, I had to get everybody to understand, okay, let's confront the brutal facts. What are we dealing with? And what are our biggest fears and how can we minimize those? So for everybody listening, this was really powerful, is that I started to understand that our fear and anxiety, which you're not a human being if you have not experienced that at some point during this.
Absolutely.
it's really only a function of two things: your perceived amount of threat and your perceived ability to cope with that threat.
Yeah.
And but listen to the operative word there, because again, talking about language, right, and using our words to paint pictures. That word perceived was what I really focused on, because that meant we were no longer fighting a battle against somebody in another country. We were fighting on the battle in between the 6 inches in between our ears, right?
Yeah.
And
for sure.
so I got everybody to identify their biggest fears and embrace them. But then we identified, what can we do? How can we all work together to cope? And that helped to alleviate the stress and anxiety, but it also forced us to take action. And here's where we had a big advantage. Not only did we jump into the online coaching and teaching immediately, but what we made available was online classes from every one of our hundreds of locations.
Wow.
that any student from any Training for Warriors could go. So it was like you could go to England, you could go to Australia, you could go and do something in Kuwait. And it created this community and this network, which I knew was going to be a big, big thing. That it's what a coach creates, right?
Absolutely.
It's almost that, what am I part of? And it gave everybody a position of strength, because, your book talks about too, like, change is hard. And guys, I get it. Nobody wants to. Do I want to work out in my house? No. With a limited amount of equipment? No. But we had to make the changes, and we tried to do it the best way we could. But then my job since then has been continually staying ahead of what are they experiencing next, and how can I best coach them to succeed in the most challenging times. And that has, man, that's spanned the gamut from what are our cleaning supplies? How do you maintain 6 feet of distance? How do you spot somebody on certain lifts, but you can't touch anybody, all the way? And hey, for anybody listening right now, I am going to say this, which is really important. Nick, I know you'll jump on it. I don't know if everybody gets it, but now as they are starting to relax restrictions around the world, I am seeing some very scary videos from places of people just jumping back into their training and everybody going crazy. And hey, that is the most dangerous. Somebody that has done nothing or has been very limited in their movement for 10 or 11 weeks to now jump back into benching and squatting or doing plyometric activities from a connective tissue standpoint, a cardiovascular event standpoint. Guys, we need to be way smarter than that as a fitness community to make sure that there is not either a rash of injuries or catastrophic events. And so what I would recommend is from one of my mentors. His name is Dr. Anthony Catarizano. He was on the team that put together the FIT rule. If you've seen that, I know they have a great display of it on the CSCCA website.
Okay.
Guys, everybody. So again, you see, if I would have just kept it to my TFW people, okay, that's great. But if somebody got hurt, I've done in service to the world. Everybody needs to be familiar with these rules. We need to ease people and reacclimate them back into training. And man, you need to make sure you've evaluated everybody, made sure everybody is medically ready. And this will lead me to the next point, which I think will go into coaching. And that, just like Nick said, every person is different. You got to understand who they are, where they are, how they learn, what they do. But you also need to understand, guys, right now, what they've done and where they are, and are they medically ready to jump back into your program? So,
well, Martin, just to jump in there, coming from a sport environment where we have 4 professional teams that we're trying to return to fitness and then return to contact, still not knowing when games will play. I mean, we've spent the better part of 11 weeks thinking about how we'll navigate what is hundreds of elite and thousands, including domestic players, back into the game of rugby. And when we look at the amount of time we've spent, you're spot on, having a proper evaluation and really making sure you know more than anything that you're clear with the client. The client's probably the one who's going to be gung-ho, wanting to get back in, especially if they've maybe had a shift in body composition that's not favorable. They've been working out in their 10 by 10 room going nuts, and now they want to get back into the world. We are going to have to say, listen, slow down. We are going to assess you, and this is an opportunity to truly put the person first. So I cannot agree with you enough, Martin. This is a huge opportunity, but also a huge risk within it, so we've got to take precaution.
Well, and you're getting my juices flowing here too. Now remember, not only is it the people that were away and and hey, yeah, they probably have gained some weight, but now they're dying to get back into those barbells, which they probably didn't have access to. We got to watch out on the eccentric motions and the explosive stuff, foot contacts. But how about this one? Now all the people that were or have gotten so much more interested in their health now that they've been locked away, guys, there can be a whole component of new people that are going to join
100%.
the fitness industry. And it is our job more than ever to make sure that this entry is safe. And that, because, man, we've never had a more golden opportunity where what do we always complain about? Oh, we've only got such a small percentage of the population that are actually involved in fitness. And the worst thing that we could do is that now people do have a reason and we either hurt them or we scare them away. And again, what's the central piece there? It will always come back to coaching. It's all wrapped up in coaching. And like you and I talked about today earlier, and what is coaching but communication? And that is a big similarity about what our books are about, but in two different ways.
Absolutely. One last thing on the COVID scenario, because I want your opinion on this. I asked Alan Cosgrove the same thing a few weeks back. What out of this, you've named one, possibly there's going to be an influx of new clients looking to elevate their mind and their body. So we have an opportunity to support and expand our support. Beautiful. But what are some of the lessons learned from this COVID scenario? Like, wow, because of this scenario, we are forced to do X. For example, more calls like this more often. That's one thing we had to pivot on. So what are some of the positives that you think out of this experience? You're like, whether it's TFW or beyond, man, because of this, we now tried this thing out, and actually we're going to keep doing that even once this is over. Yeah. Any insights there, Martin?
Yeah, well, definitely, without a doubt, I think this has advanced, whether you want to call it online training or remote training or our just ability to connect. Now, say you and I, we've done stuff like this with each other before, but now look, now we can make our conversation like people are flies on a wall and more people can benefit. So I think knowledge and information is going to spread more rapidly because people became technology adopters that probably wouldn't have if this wasn't necessary. Nice. Now, but here's where I'll go a little bit deeper, though, that is less technology, but in a number of the calls that I have done with either universities, teams, I kept asking, what is the positives that have come out? And this is very interesting because regardless of who I've talked to, it's always been the same answer. And I'm sure you already know what's coming. And I'm actually going to practice right now and paint a picture. I'm going to use an analogy from the Going Analog chapter of The Language of Coaching. So watch this. I was writing about it a lot, and that's how I do stuff to think my ideas through. And I kept saying silver lining, silver lining, silver lining. So that's what you just asked me, Martin. What's the silver lining? Yes, we've been pushed inside. Yes, economies have been hurt. Business has been hurt. Well, what's a silver lining? Yep. And you know what's funny? I didn't know what silver lining meant. Like, I thought silver lining meant you open up you have maybe a bad jacket on or a beat up jacket, but you open it up and it's got like this beautiful silver lining.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's not what it is.
Okay.
That's not what it is. So silver lining was originally coined hundreds of years ago by a poet. And paraphrasing, he said, okay, if you've got these dark clouds or there's a storm or something's blocking the sun, the beauty, regardless, the sun is still shining back there. You got to know that. And it will always create a silver lining around that cloud. And so now you see how we all have this different picture. So you'll be able to use that for cueing in a minute when we talk about it.
I love it.
But here is the biggest silver lining that I've gotten. And I'm not proud to say it in some ways, but it was necessitated. Now, but everybody may not know. Guys, I have 4 daughters. And for anybody listening, if you say, 4 daughters, you're going to try for the boy? No, we have already tried 4 times. But so I got 4 daughters. My wife, we're at home. They go to 4 different schools because they're different ages. I coach track and field at the high school that my daughter goes to. My other daughters are swimmers. We are all over the place. So our schedules are like Grand Central Station. It's hard enough to know where anybody has to be. And I will say we have forgotten sometimes where someone is or something else. But here was the biggest silver lining. For the last 65 days, we have had a family dinner every night.
Yes.
No tech. We communicate. And here's the thing. We didn't even know how to do it. Yeah. We sat down. It was like the first day we were like, hey, we're all here.
What's your name again?
What do we do? Yeah. Who are you? And then I got creative with it. And I started saying, okay, first we went around some nights, favorite movies, favorite books. But then we got deeper. What do you like best about this person? And we called it the Rooney hot seat. And you would sit in the hot seat and everybody would go around the table and say something good about you. Everybody would go around the table and say something they're proud of. Everyone would go around the table and say something special about your relationship nobody knows. And I'll tell you, Nick, the connections we made and just what I know about my kids, I'm going to miss that connection. Because, like, being honest, guys, I wish I could say, oh, I can always have that. We don't get home till 8 o'clock at night because of some stuff. My other kids are at practice. We're running around like crazy. I'm traveling 100+ days a year. Like, it just, that wasn't going to work. And I probably haven't had that many dinners in a row in the last 6 years. 10 years.
Yeah.
And, but using that as a bigger thing, it's shown everybody, even though we've been pushed inside, the biggest thing I've learned is we are all connected and we crave it. Like, what are we doing right now? We're connecting with people. So the people that are participating and listening, or the people that will go on to listen, we're connected and we need it. And really, again, here's what's interesting, man. It'll keep coming back to it. These 2 books are about communication, but it's a communication to create a connection that then creates a result. And and that's what coaching is. And maybe we had to learn it by getting pushed into our homes.
So let's use that as a segue. And it's a beautiful story because I'll just say this, my son, who's 4 going on 5, he's learned to ride his bike. He's learned to rollerblade. He's learned to play street hockey. He's learned to shoot a basketball. Some people might think, well, shouldn't he have already known those things? Well, in Ireland, basketball and street hockey are hard to come by. So, but to be able to be there with him and my daughter day in, day out over the last 12 weeks, whatever it's been, has been amazing. And, again, as we were saying, for all the negativity, and certainly there is negativity, and we don't want to downplay the scenario, there is true silver lining that we need to bring forward. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's powerful and resonates with me for sure.
No, you too on it. And, what's funny, you just brought up, so I taught them how to skateboard. They didn't even and again, I'm not proud to say it, but what is this big sign, guys? This has revealed, I call this time, it's this great revealer. It's not only revealed our discipline and our habits, I'd love to say I read more now. No, I always read a lot. I'd love to say, wow, I'm eating better. No, I kind of did that. But I was not spending enough time with my kids, my family, and I wasn't teaching them a lot of those things I was taking for granted. So, but now I see that's the most important. And I will, when this is over, I got to make more conscious effort to have it because, hey guys, for anybody who's got young kids, because mine are a little older than Nick's, my daughter, I got less than a year of her left. She's officially a senior now after Friday or whatever. So she's a senior, which I can't believe it. And I don't know, I'm not in any rush for her to disappear, and so, take advantage of the time. Oh, here would be a great one, right, Nick? Hey, why don't you work out more? What do they say? I don't have the what?
Time.
Hey, why don't you eat right? That one I love. I don't have the time. Hey, why don't you read more books? Don't have the time. Time. Why aren't you with your family? Don't have the time. Well, guys, everybody got a whole boatload of time. Yeah. And if we still didn't do the right stuff with it, then man, and there's a whole section in Nick's book about habits, and this also uncovered those. It uncovered those, and you got to learn from them. You got to grow from them. I know that might hurt, right? See, a coach has to do that too. I talk about that in mine, right? That's where this one is that one hits you in the gut. Ooh, I don't like to hear that, but that's what a coach has to do too. Is they got to tell you where you're at before they can show you where to go.
So let's do this. And for those listening in on the Zoom, again, thank you for joining us. Go ahead and chuck questions in the Q&A box, and Martin and I will do our best to try to freestyle and riff on those as the conversation kind of floats through. Otherwise, if you're happy to listen, we got plenty on the docket right now. And as a first item, it's so interesting that when I was reading your book and I was on a bullet train back to the airport in Tokyo from the World Cup, and I was reading through everything, like, holy smokes, the amount of parallels. Even though, yours is a fable, it's a narrative, it's a story, beautifully written. Mine has a lot of story, even though it's a technical book. So there's a lot of parallels, but also a lot of differences. But that's the beauty of it, to be able to tell the same story in two different ways to maximize the connection with people. But one of the stories that was identical, and I don't know if you got the book from Chris Poyer as well, was the book Aspire. And in the book Aspire, which is basically a book about words, and you talk about silver lining, where words come from. And we both tell a similar enough story, I think, that comes from that book around the word coach. And so I wanted to start. Can you share that story? Where does the word coach come from, Martin? And for you personally, how do you define it? And let's go from there.
For sure. And it's interesting. And I want to start off, I'm even going to go one step back.
Do it.
A little bit, just to explain the similarities or how these books fit together.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
Nick said it, but he didn't understand it. Because when he sent me my book and I sent him his book, which was right around the same time.
It was within a few
weeks. And we both said, remember, we were talking, we said, and I told you, I said, man, my book, it's different, Nick. This is a different departure for me. This one is a story, and it's a fable. Yeah. And you were like, man, mine has stories too. And that's when I was like, oh no, maybe we did the same thing. But then when we got them, we saw how they complement, but they were different. And here's how I would describe it for everybody listening. In a previous life, or actually in my earlier life, I was an orthopedic physical therapist. And so I went to the Medical University of South Carolina. I got my degree in physical therapy, and I got my master's degree in health sciences simultaneously. But the first thing they taught you when you got to medical school was the Hippocratic Oath. And to be clear, a lot of people think the Hippocratic Oath is, first do no harm. They all say that. And yes, that is paraphrasing what Hippocrates said. It's actually way longer. Like, I don't know if anybody knows that. If you want to see the original, it's crazy. It's like, don't poison people, it goes through the whole list.
I think it's very specific on do no harm.
Yeah. But ultimately, I hope everybody can understand that if you're going to be a doctor, the first thing you should hear is, hey, being a doctor is important. And if nothing else, if somebody's under your care or under your watch, they shouldn't get worse, right? Don't make them worse. And what's interesting, though, is, then I started to look at, what does it take to become a coach? And to become a coach, if you're just a dad or you're just a body with a heartbeat, or you're around and somebody needs somebody, hey, here's the whistle, here's the hat, now you're the coach. And there's no understanding of what it really means to be that.
Yes.
And there's definitely no understanding of don't make anybody any worse. And how do I know that? Because I am still seeing people repeating the same programs of the people that made them worse.
Yes.
And so therefore, without further ado, guys, this book, if you went to coaching school, if there was a coaching university only, this would be the Hippocratic Oath. It would be this story that you quickly read so that you never forget the authority that comes with that title. You never forget the responsibility that comes with that title. And you know that, man, now that I am identifying as a coach, I have my biggest thing should be that I am always seeking to make them a little bit better than before I met them. Like that, so that this book shows you how to do that. Now, but this isn't enough. Like, that gives you the ideas. But now, my first class and my most favorite class of the medical university was gross anatomy. And everybody takes it together. The surgeons, the dentists, the therapists, everybody. Was the most arduous, but the most fun class I ever had. And they give you a book, and it's called Gray's Anatomy. And they dig down with this incredible detail of they dissect how to do it. And guys, this is Gray's Anatomy in that course. So first, it's like, man, being a coach is so important. Here's how you do it to make sure you don't make anybody worse, even though you're trying to be a good coach. So hopefully that makes sense of how they all fit together. And now I'll go back to the original story. But would you say that's a good interpretation?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, in reading your book, you get at the essence, the true essence of what it means to be a coach, to go on the coaching journey, the struggles, the highs, the lows, right when you think you've got it, that old coach comes around the corner and gives you another little nugget that you hadn't thought of. And really, as much as it is quite literally a fable and the evolution and the journey of a coach, I think just as easily the metaphor for life is embedded within your book, and it's beautifully told. And if your book tells that story, if so to speak, your book is the map, it's the beautiful map in 3D. What I wanted to do is, let's say, highlight the map, zoom in and out, but I want to give people the tools to literally navigate it, to climb the mountain. And together, you need the map, and you need the crampons, and you need the backpack. You need the tools and the map to get up the mountain. And I think that's a beautiful synergy of the two texts.
Well, and other similarities there for everybody listening, because it's pretty interesting. Another way I would go is, because again, it's this one, like you said, the map, or I was picking out these words as I was going through, and I like to play with words. Again, the language of coaching. And I found 2 5-letter words starting with M, because this book, because you kept saying motor, right? Motor learning. I want to improve the motor skill. I want to teach motor. And it's motor. And I came up with this 5-letter word, moral, right? Like, so it's almost like this is the one that it's like the morality, like you said, this being a coach. And this one is like, man, boom, like now how you do it. So that was one thing. But then I want to make sure that everybody doesn't get it wrong, because you might misconstrue and say, okay, this is an X's and O's book or a programming book. No. And I think so many coaches get so caught up in that, right? Like you'll see these coaching seminars, again, using, say, football, because that's classic as an example. It'll be like, I want strategy, I want tactics, I want techniques, I want all this stuff. But then we say, okay, coach, do you know how to implement that? Or okay, coach, do you know in any way to be able to now deliver, or to make sure that there's some long-term effects or learning that happens in accordance with that? And that's where it runs dry. So guys, this book again, the X's and O's are the what.
It's the program. It's the what
describes it as. But guys, these two are the how, right? Like this is the how, you get there. So that was a big.
And I just want to say, for those watching live or in the future, I did not, let me be very clear, ask Martin to do this. But what you have in front of you, and the reason I wanted to have Martin on, is someone who is utterly passionate about how to coach. So let's do this. Answer the question on the coach and where that word came from.
Yeah.
Then after that, Martin, I want to know, was there a moment, was there a spark that in your mind said, holy smokes, all we do is talk about the what and the X's and O's and the program design, but what about the person? Yeah. How do I get the stuff off the program into the person? How I coach matters. So after you give us that insight on coaching, I want to know your spark that brought you on this path that you and I both agree so few are on, insofar as presenting and yelling from the rooftops, hey guys and gals, this is important.
Yep, got it. Well, definitely from the original part. Hey, the book Aspire. No, I didn't get that from Chris Poirier. I mean, geez,
okay.
Is he handing out books? I mean, I saw that in there. I wish.
It's one that he told me about years ago.
I know, but I will say this, and this is a shout out to one of our friends, Alan Cosgrove, told me about that book.
Okay.
A long, long time ago. So, but that story of the Hungarian coaches is much older. So I want to take it even further. My dad is the son of teachers. So his parents were both teachers, in particular English teachers. And my dad always had this thing, right? He would say, son, don't use a word if you don't know what it means, because either one or two things is going to happen. You're either going to look silly, or worst case scenario, you're going to look stupid.
Yeah.
So he and I talk so much. I just read this incredible book by Eric Larson that my kid had to read. So I read it too. And the only tough part about it was you need a thesaurus when you read it, because some of the, like every other sentence has some really, really tough words. So if Eric Larson is listening, I apologize. I really love the book, but I want to understand what every word means, or I can't use it, right? So when I started so long ago, trying to talk about coaching. Remember how long now? It's been 10 years we've been presenting on coaching.
Yes.
And like what? And then it was almost like, okay, what does the word mean? What's the derivative? Where does it come from? And that's the great story that we both shared. Yeah, and I know the exact page where you have it. It was right at the start. Yeah, right here. Part 2 coach.
Part 2. Yeah.
Do I know your book, Nick, or what?
Man.
Don't. Come on, man.
It's impressive. It's impressive.
So in part 2, well, yeah, guys, I'm not going to get on Nick's thing and not have studied his book. But again, because I really enjoyed the book too. And that is this one crossover moment. It's actually, yeah, it doesn't have the page number listed, but our one crossover moment. And I don't know how to say it correctly, but COCS or COCS, which is like the word coach. I always
in Hungarian.
I just described it as it's an old Eastern European word. And guys, when coaches, right? Or I always say, hey, have you ever, when you sit in the back of the plane, where do you sit? Coach. When you ride in the back of the bus, or train, where do you sit? Coach. When you go to England, buses are called coaches. So I have this famous story. I was driving with my buddy, right? And we're driving in England. There's no parking in London, no parking. And then I see this sign and it says coaches parking. And I said, look, it's right here. We can park here. We're coaches. And he goes, no, that's not how it works. Out. Yeah. But that old word, guys, is for a Hungarian city that used to make the most beautiful stage coaches. And the word, like, again, became synonymous with the coach, the stage coach, which became synonymous with my working definition. So what I always said, when that clicked, it was that a coach takes you somewhere.
Yes.
Right? Like that was the first thing that like blew me away, where I was like, man, and you know how I walk it through in the book. So in Coach to Coach, it's this conversation that this old coach is challenging a young coach with to make him pull it out, right? And now the next part of my definition, which is, I think, unique. And hey, Nick, and I'm going to let everybody in on this because I don't know if I told you any of this, but guys, everything in the book, it's a parable and a fable, but everything in the book happened. It's all real. Some of the characters are composites of a few people.
Yeah.
But I
wanted to ask you that. Okay, so now we know.
So it's real. So watch this. So the story where he tells about the one coach that finds the kid and says he looks perfect, and then the other story where the coach called the kid chubby. Those both happened to me at the same within a 6-month span, and both of those changed the trajectory of my life forever. Wow. And I still remember them clear as day. And that's that's 35 years ago, right? And so watch this next part for everybody listening. Yeah, coach, if everybody can say, whoa, that's so cool. They take you somewhere. Well, I usually say then, hey, how many people with a show of hands had a good coach? Somebody that, helped them be who they are today. Every hand goes up. Yeah. Then I say, how many people had a bad coach? Somebody that like held them back, stopped them, hurt them. Man, the hands go up twice as fast. And people say, how much time you got, man? Yeah. And what's funny is you never see those people. Like I saw in your book, how you had said that weight room coach, I forget what his name was. You in your acknowledgments, there was a guy that was your high school weight room coach. He was one of the first ones. Rudy. Yeah, Rudy. Yeah, there it is. So I got it right here, Rudy, which I thought for a second, man, did he have Rudy as his coach? But what's interesting is
they were similar enough.
But what's interesting is that's one of the first guys you thank. But I didn't see you thanking all the people that wrecked you. But yet we should, because they also give us the roadmap how not to do it. And so my further working definition is, hey, yeah, a coach takes you somewhere, but man, it better be someplace you want to go. Like it, and I think that's the big mistake is I had a lot of coaches. Yeah, they took me somewhere, but somewhere bad. They took me somewhere and made me hate stuff. Or see, again, here's what's cool. Watch this, Nick. This is going to be really cool. This one shows guys, the how to cue all these different areas in the back of the book, whether it's actual lifts, movement, performance, different sports, incredible. You know what this one's about? It goes one level higher before you get there, like Nick said. Guys, are you going to take that exercise and punish them with it? So Nick has a vertical jump in the book. You're going to make somebody do 1,000 of them because they were late and now they hate that exercise and they hate working out and they get a little bit of rhabdo and now they're so injured they never want to do it again in their life. Well, you know what? You took them somewhere. You took them somewhere that they hate and now they never are going to do that sport again. So it's
a coach takes someone from where they are to where they want to be.
Yeah, where they want to go. I always say, like, because we're going to say destination, right? Like in the direction of where they're going, just like how you're using the cueing, right? With the direction section, hey, are we thinking about pushing where we're pushing away from or where we're trying to get towards? Did I read the book, Nick? I mean, I could give your thing, but what I'm getting at is now watch, and here's the last piece, which this one I think everybody forgets. That's another deeper piece, and why they need a coach, right? Well, wait, they know where they want to go, right? Like, and guys, anybody could read a book how to get there, but see, the coach is there to take them, whether using experience, which Nick and I, both these books talk about. Guys, you got it. Like, your experience is how somebody is going to help you get there. That's important. But what I say is, but we all need somebody more than ever. We understand that. We have the internet at our fingertips, but you need somebody to take you there because you can't go there yourself. Right? Most people either lack the discipline or they lack the experience, or how about this one? The cueing. See, still you got to base that cueing on analogies that you know, or that you've gone through the movement yourself, or that you've done it, or something that you've done the research, and now you help them get there. So there's this depth to it that I think, hey, again, how you had talked about in the Aspire book, it just says, hey, take you somewhere, where there's more to that, right? And so it's building on that idea of what the word coach means. But once I understood that, and if you have that working framework, as you know, then this book goes deeper into coachability, empathy, these deep areas of how do you do it? Yeah. So I give kind of the roadmap, okay, how do you kind of live that as the person? This one, once you understand that and you want to be a good coach, now you got to have, like you said, the toolbox.
Well, you have to know you want to climb Everest before you train to climb Everest. And I think what happens is if you read Martin's book and it doesn't resonate with you, you don't want to be a coach.
Yeah.
Arguably, you probably don't want to be in a position of servitude to others. But if you read that book, and especially when you get to the bag of peanuts story, I literally teared up when I was reading that.
Yeah, don't tell anybody.
I'm not telling anybody. I'm not telling anybody.
Everybody gets choked up at the end.
It caught me off guard. I'll be honest. It caught me off guard, right hook to the mouth. I'm like, holy smokes! But again and again in your book, it just spoke to me at the marrow of my bones. And that's what I love about it. That for someone who's in our industry and maybe they're contemplating, is this right for me? Is it not? Man, pick up your book and read it. And independent of whether or not you stay, you will take so much out of it. The journey of life itself is covered eloquently and beautifully in story. But if it resonates with you, you know that this is the place to be. And at the same time, you know it is going to be difficult. So you need tools. And most certainly your book gives people, I would say, emotional tools and how to actually approach this and empathize and communicate. And then I try to do the same at maybe a slightly different level.
Watch this one. I'm having a breakthrough.
Do it.
Having a breakthrough. He knows, because he knows when I come up with these ones.
I love it, Martin. I love it.
Watch this, because you'll be able to help put it together with this one. Because this is one that I say, I don't think it's an original. And I don't know if anything's original. Also, guys, in this book, why I also love it is there's one reference to a guy that has always been a hero to me, and it happens again and again and again. That's why I'm always like, man, how do me and Nick think on such the same wavelength? There's one guy in here, guys, that was such a pioneer. And I don't even understand how he knew what he knew over 100 and something years ago. But everything he said, he didn't have the science to back it, but it always still keeps ringing true. And William James, guys, the father of modern psychology and everything else. And he is quoted so many times throughout, which is, I think, is so cool because it bridges. But watch this one. And I don't think, I'm not saying this is from him, but it's an idea like it.
Yeah.
And what I always say is, don't wait to feel like doing something. Get moving, because your movements will lead to your emotions, right?
Yes.
And here's the thing, like Nick just said, this is the emotions, but then you got to know how to coach the movements. Yeah. So this is going to be like, hey, do you even want to coach emotions? Do you understand how important it is that you are coaching someone in the emotions? But then, hey, you better not do it wrong. Like now, don't tell them, hey, dorsiflex the toe and really squeeze the glute here, kid. This will be, and you're telling him that right when he's about to go out to make the big play. Like that would be disastrous. But, and you know what's funny, Nick, after I read the book, then I was like, oh my gosh, there were a lot of coaching moments in here. But really, this book it wasn't like that there was never cueing or, it wasn't like coaching moves or anything. But I was almost scared when I was reading through to make sure I hadn't made, like any mistakes,
come on.
And then Nick's going to call me up and be like, hey, the book was great except for that internal cue you gave on page 158. So, I had to throw it.
As you know, in the book, I do my best to create a home for every kind of language. As I say, every kind of language has a home on the block. Just not every kind of language lives in the queue that we call the house. So, no, man.
Well, sure. and what's funny though too is your big section on the analogy. This thing it's just one giant analogy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like that's. So it's almost like the analogy for being a coach and storytelling.
Well, that's it. And so let's use that as a segue. I've wanted to ask you this a long time. Was there a moment? Was there a mentor that sparked you to say, holy smokes, the program is important, but it's about the person. It's not about it. The what needs to be there, but it's the how that makes the magic. Yeah. What was your transition into knowing that coaching and how to coach was the key? Because you live and breathe this stuff.
This is going to blow your way. It's pretty cool. Well, in the book, and I got something here that's going to be an incredible visual too. Hang on, I'm going to grab it. And I got to make sure I have this thing set up right.
And the beard game of Mr. Rooney right now is unbelievable.
Hey, everybody knows my goatee is my signature, but man, I actually cleaned it up for this interview a little bit. I've never done that before in my life. This is my first kind of official beard. So, but it was.
And is it for style or warmth? Style or warmth? I mean,
well, my kids were calling me Santa, so I had to trim it down. But back to and I just left a note because you had asked another question of when was there a moment. I'm going to give you 2 moments now.
I love it.
So, hey, in my new book, Coach to Coach, I dedicated it to my old coach.
Yes.
And guys, this was a guy that found me at a really dark time in my life. I wasn't a good student. I was not feeling great about myself. 12, 13, I was a late bloomer. So as you can imagine, that's a tough time for kids. And I had gotten cut from baseball. And this guy was standing outside the room telling all the kids that just got cut because he knew he was going to have some fresh meat possibly for track. And he was telling all the kids they looked perfect for track. And man, he didn't maybe get anybody that day, but he got me because, and listen, this is very important because he had the courage to stand outside of a door and tell kids that he had no idea who they were, that they looked perfect for something, which, man, how could you never go wrong with that? And 7 years we worked together after that. And he changed the trajectory of my life. He taught me not only about sport and not only about why it would be important to go to college and how I could achieve and about lifting and eating right and all those things. But he also taught me about humility. He taught me about charity, just the things and the ways that, for instance, our varsity jackets, we would raise money as a team because where I came from in this blue collar town, not everybody could afford one. And he said, hey guys, either we all get jackets or nobody gets jackets.
Yes.
And his greatest thing was he would hand you the jacket. Your nickname was on it, which again, you talk about the power in terms of when you can get somebody's attention using a name, and hey, he's only called me Rune my whole life. And I've only called him Coach. And watch this. This is where the story is going to get interesting. But I went to college, Nick, and man, unfortunately, my college coach didn't know the event at all and actually really didn't care. And it's hard for me to even say that because I was on my own. And that's how I dug into exercise science and sport and anatomy, because I was trying to understand my event better and coach myself. And but my biggest regret is I never reached my potential. And I know that. And I know that because I didn't, like I for what I was physically, I never reached my potential, and that haunted me. But then I went on and I sought more knowledge. That's when I went on to the medical university, and man, I was so hungry for the knowledge, and I loved it, and I learned more and more. And you ready for this? And when I came home, now say I'm like in my 7th year of schooling, and now I know so much. Do you know what I realized about my old coach?
What?
He didn't know that much. He didn't know the anatomy I knew. He didn't know the biomechanics and the motor learning and the programming and the deep inner workings of neurology in the brain. And I started to resent him. See, I would always come home and see my old coach, and I would always come home and see my old coach. But then I was like, man, if he would have learned all this stuff, he could have made me better. He could have helped me even more. And I don't know, there was this period where we weren't as touching as much. And then get this. Then guess what happened?
What?
I became a coach. And then I realized all that knowledge and crap, when I tried to be really smart and I wanted to show everybody how smart I was and how tough I was, I didn't get the greatest results. But going back to that story you said, and we both, another synergy of ours is we were both involved with the NFL Combine at the same time.
Yeah.
It had so much pressure on us, pressure for performance down to hundreds of seconds and ounces, that I say it pulled out my ability to coach, because I realized I wasn't getting if you're not getting a result, you better start digging into why that was true. And here's what happened. When I really started to identify as a coach, and then when I really realized it was that connection I was making and the cues that I was giving and how that I was doing it, then I realized my coach was a genius. When you know what I started doing?
Yeah.
I started giving out jackets to all my guys with a nickname on it. And I started realizing what they wanted and who they were and what they needed. And and here's a great line. You ready? I started coaching the guy right there in front of me. Maybe this cue worked better for this guy or that guy or this guy. And I started to dive in. And here's what's really cool. You ready? I dedicated the book to him. I never told him I wrote the book.
Okay.
And I sent it to him.
Oh.
And here, watch. I'm going to play this for you if I can find it. Listen.
Do I need to get the tissue box here?
You might. See if you can hear it. I'm going to try to play it loud.
Hi, Martin. It's Coach. I just finished the book. I can't believe it. What else to say? Thank you. God bless you.
So that'll give you a little bit. It goes on and on and on. But could you hear it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, guys, he's led to a lot of just incredible moments in my life. And I don't know if I ever really told him. I've always told him, I guess, but I think this thing, guys, my selfish reason for writing the book is 40 years after that guy found me, I just wanted to make sure that he understood that he really mattered and he was important. They had to retire the guy because his knees had gone so bad. He had to have knee replacements. He just couldn't coach anymore. And I don't know, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people that you come in touch with. And
you never know.
Yeah,
you never know. You never know what you're going to be to that person.
Yeah.
I mean, the last thing that he probably thought was that Martin Rooney was going to write a best-selling book and dedicate it to him, where he, by his very nature of his doing what he did and the love of what he did as a servant, was the spark for you. And we are that spark for so many. And that's why, when I see you and your energy and what you commit, I know it comes from such a place of substance, and stories like that just solidify that. You are granite on fire. It's just unbelievable, Martin. Thank you for sharing that story.
No, hey, my pleasure. But and I use his name in the book too, right at that part where the kid says it's perfect. But watch this. This is how he always beats me out. He always makes me better. So a week ago, my coach now, he lives in Florida. He doesn't live in New Jersey anymore. and he fishes. And guys, we're still in touch. That's the other part too. We are
Amazing.
still in touch. So you want to know your measure as a coach? Watch this. Do the kids come back out for the sport the next year? Do the kids stay in touch with you the rest of their life? Right. And I didn't have a lot of coaches like that, but I had him. So he has been that model or those moments. And I always think on him. But he's just this great guy, and he makes lure holders for his friends. Like, that's what he does now to keep himself busy. And the other day in the mail, he sent me a lure holder, but he said I couldn't make it for lures. He said, because after I read that book, you're not a fisherman, you're a writer. And he made me and painted this TFW pencil holder that is now sitting on my desk. And I guess what I'm saying is, guys, it's like these little things. That's what this one is about, is like, what are all the little – it's these little things. Like, what's that little thing you're doing? Or did you reach out to somebody? Or did you like, what was the little extra that you could go as somebody's coach that maybe they're not going to say thanks? Like, maybe they don't pat you on the back, but that's not what the job is. No. The job of a coach is not to get pats on the back. It's to give them. And I think we make a big mistake with that today, that when we think coaches, Nick, I think everybody thinks, oh, coach is Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, and that's a coach, and you should make $5 million a year and get all the notoriety. Like, no. Man, when I made the real transition, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about them. If you're more concerned about you, you still think you're an athlete. If you're concerned about them, you think you're a coach. And then you're going to want to find better ways to make them better, and this is one way to do it. So, again, I'm just trying to, again, show everybody the fabric of – and I challenge everybody, what's on your coaching library? If it's a bunch of anatomy books and strategy books, and you're reading about sport and more knowledge of, I don't know, like the actual tactics or physicality behind the game, you're missing some of the stuff. And I think we're pioneering, Nick, a new genre where if someone were to ask me, hey, what's another book like this? I don't know one. If someone were to say, what's another book like this? There isn't one. So, so it's just kind of, I think it's neat that even after thousands of years, by the way, everybody, guys, there were elite coaches back in the days of the Roman gladiators. They were producing nutrition books, training books. Now, were they great? Maybe not. But guys, coaching's not a new profession, but there's always something new that you can learn if you're open to learning. Right?
So Martin, you bring up a really interesting point. And so I profile it in my book. Have you read The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galway?
Absolutely.
Right.
And guys, so I've got a bunch of Galway's books on my shelves. He's another one that you mentioned in there.
Well, it is. And so he, when we look at him, it was either 1972 or 74. I think it was 74. He pens The Inner Game of Tennis. Again, he's an English major at Harvard. He's the captain of his tennis team.
And watch this. As you're talking, Nick, you keep going. I'm going to take everybody on a little tour here.
I love it, Martin.
And I'm going to pull off my original copy.
Okay.
So that you can go nuts.
I love it. And so he's the captain of the tennis team. He's an English major. He comes to the West Coast, and inevitably he abandons, any kind of an English track to be a tennis pro. And he pens this book, which once you find out that he's an English major, it doesn't surprise you when you read it, because it's such an eloquently easy to understand, very story-based book. And how could a book on tennis, I just looked at it the other day, still lives in the top 5, normally number 1 for sports coaching. And it was back in 1974.
Now, look at this.
Look at that.
Now, it's insane. And watch this, guys. On my shelves, right? And look at this. Just so, guys, everybody should be a reader. You want to write a book like me and Nick did? You better read a whole lot of books, baby. So as you can see, I got some cool football and other trophy stuff up there. But my biggest trophy case is this library. And there are thousands of books on it. I actually had to buy another one. And look at this. These are just the books I've read this year right here. So that's the new shelf. But
you're living it.
Get ready. Get ready, Nick. Get ready. On my shelves, I never have 2 of a book. Like, why would I do that? Like, I don't have enough room. But look at this. Now, I got this one of The Inner Game of Tennis. Yeah. And as you can see, too, do you see how many dog ears are in my page. So
That's a
not only
well-run
do I
book.
dog ear, but you see how I have a system. So I dog ear, look at that, got stuff, dog ear, underline. But guys, when you come across an original, even if it doesn't have the backing, look at this. And
if
actually,
you invite me over to your house one day, that might slip out the back door.
he just made it sound. Yeah, he made it sound.
I got to get over there to you. I got to get over to you at some point.
And guys, how you know when it's an original is there's only one copyright date.
Wow.
You see the 1976, if that is the original copyright. But at least I'm trying to believe that. But awesome. Guys, what an incredible. Time when they didn't have the research and the science yet, he
nails it. He nails it. So here's the question, Martin. Why then do you and I sit here having both? And I don't know how you feel, but I wrote the book that I wanted. And the reality is I would not have written the language of coaching had it existed. I'm not interested in the fame or the effort, as you and I both know, that goes into writing a book, especially as a single author. But yet these books have not been written. And so we take it upon ourselves as servants to coaches, as well as our athletes, to write them. Why has it taken so long? Why isn't how we coach as popular or as prominent as what we coach, even though the how we coach piece is ever present and constant in what we do?
Yeah. Well, here's what, and how I would answer that. And I'm definitely saying this too. Guys, I kept reading until I kept saying, there's this book that I want. There's this book that I want. And I couldn't find the book. So then I wrote the book, and so what's that one, guys? Find a need, fill a need. And that's how we push stuff forward. But did you hear I said push stuff forward? But Nick asked, but why don't we always do that? And here's why. Because we keep looking back. And whether you want to say dogma, whether you want to say, watch, I'll use this word, Nick, which will get neural for you, which you will like, because I definitely know that about you in the book. But I consider things like programs, right? Yes. And you talk about in there, when you are, what is it? When neurons that fire together, wire together.
Yeah.
Did I read the book, Nick?
You
Nick,
read the book.
Did I read the book?
Cell assemblies.
I'll tell you what
Cell
page
assemblies.
that
You got it.
But watch this. But that's what exactly happens, why we don't move forward. We've got coaches making us run laps when we're bad. We got coaches making us do burpees till we puke. We got coaches restricting water because they want to be tough. And man, all those neurons fire together. That's how we did it. And then now when we wear the word coach on our shirt, we immediately program that, well, I'm going to be like my coach was, and I'm going to repeat the programs. And guys, that's the same is true for why you probably have the same relationship with money that your parents did. It's what religion you probably are. And whether if we want to say coaching is a religion or not, we are just repeating the programs of our forefathers until somebody goes deep enough to finally ask bigger questions. So watch this. You know why this book exists? Nick, you know why this book exists? Because you asked why. Because you asked why. Somebody finally said, wait a minute, like these people aren't getting as good as they could get from this. Or can't there be a better way to do this? Whoa, and then something clicks and you read something and another thing. And then the theory comes and then the pursuit happens. And it's, guys, everything that we've built on is built on the shoulders of giants. That's a famous Newton quote, I believe. Yeah. But the whole thing is, and then you take it further, but you got to ask the questions. And that's what I was saying is, why do we got all these coaches hurting people? Or why does a coach have to think he's tough? And that's the only way that you can get your point across. Just like, why do I see these people saying squeeze the glute? That doesn't, I don't know if that works. Or wait a minute, I've been telling all these people this, and then boom, you dig enough, like, hey guys, Nick talks about it, and man, you want a deeply researched book, it's in there. But they were like Wolf, right? Doing all that research. It was there, just nobody ever said, well, wait a minute, let me apply it here or take it to this.
And translate it. It takes people like you that have the shelving unit of books to get in there and turn the 8-syllable words into the 2 to 3 syllable words. And I think as coaches that have also committed to the academic pursuits, not to be academics, but because we're treasure hunters.
Yeah.
We want to go in there, we want to find the nuggets, and we want to take that unrefined nugget, shine it up, make it attractive, make it simple, and give it to the world. And in that case, I think both of us as pracademics, we are trying to make everything we read and understand practical. There are very few new ideas in my book. I don't know how you feel about yours, but it's a new way, it's a new coat of paint to share them, to allow these ideas to be transmitted to everybody who calls themselves a coach, who wants to take someone from where they are to where they are going or where they want to be.
Yep. And they couldn't do it themselves because they didn't do the research or they didn't do the stuff. But I love that. And here's what I'll even second it. So for anybody interested too, I would definitely agree. Nobody the word invent, I like as innovate, because hey, I didn't invent
iterators.
Yeah, I'd love to say I invented the push-up. I have it trademarked. Every one that anybody does, give me some money. Nah, I can't do that. And the same thing for speed training. Like I said, you go back to the ancient Greeks, it was all there. It's just a different way to say it. But let's go on that thing I use as the example on money, right? I got a lot of books on finance on my shelves, and they all kind of say the same stuff. They all keep saying, save 10% of your income, make sure that you invest, don't go into debt, watch out for credit. They all say the same thing, but they say it in different ways. One tells a story, one does something else, one uses research. So for anybody listening, here's the ingredient that I want to make sure you understand about me and Nick. The reason these exist, and I talk about it in this book, we have an enthusiasm. We have a passion for it. That's the other big ingredient. Like Galway never writes The Inner Game of Tennis if he wasn't interested in tennis and didn't want to be better at tennis, when he was at Harvard or whatever else. It's kind of like, and we want to make other people better after it's over. And that's that practicality. If we did it, but nobody could use it, it wouldn't make any sense. So that's the other part I'll challenge anybody listening right now. If you want to be a great coach, you got to be way more fired up about that thing you're coaching before anybody else, or nobody's going to burn.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
That's, so again, another secret that even in your book, when you read it, watch this, because you did say it. It's like, it's how you say it, what you say it. There's such depth. But here's the other part, guys, that's like an intangible. I call like the magic, because, and maybe Nick and I will talk about this today, because a lot of people always ask me, because I gave a speech like 10 years ago called The Art and Science of Coaching.
Yes.
And I think it's both, what is it? It's that Forrest Gump line when he goes like, I think it's both, so, but it's kind of like, but the magic that ties them all together, if it's going to work, is you got to be into it. Yes. You got to like love it. And you're never going to, I don't know if they'll find a study or a thing that can show, because watch, hey, Nick, prove to me how much in love you are with something. Like, or hey, watch, ready? Do you love your kids? Do you love your kids?
Oh, I love my kids. Yeah.
Prove it.
You were looking off to the right. I'm like, does he have a guest in there? Does he have a guest in there?
No, you know what it was? I'm looking at you. Every time I go this way, I'm looking at you.
Okay. I'm here. I'm like, Martin, do we have someone else joining us?
But it's that famous thing. It's like, do you love your family? Prove it.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, yeah, how do I do that? But that's what I mean. So, but it's there. And I will say, this book is kind of on that side of the continuum.
Yeah, it's the love story for me.
Yeah.
With coaching. It truly is. You can just, Brian's experience as he goes through the book and meeting Coach. And so just tell me this. Are you Brian and is Coach your high school coach, or again, are they both amalgamations?
Okay. Now for everybody that hasn't read it.
Yes.
Here's what I'm going to say first.
The spoiler alert? No,
but meaning I wrote this in a very particular way so that everyone, so here's what I will say. For what I am about to say, it is my interpretation, right? So it's my interpretation of the book, because I don't want anyone to say, well, that's what Martin said and that's who these people are. No. Because everybody, what was really neat is when I would ask people, who do you think it is?
Yeah.
People would say, watch, Nick, they would say, is that your dad? Is that people would say, is that God? They would say, oh man, I feel like you're talking to me. This was my coach. So I even wrote it in a way, you notice, I never say what they look like. I don't
No, I love that. I think because, if you read, and you probably did, I read Stephen King's book on writing and a few other kind of memoirs on writing before mine.
Yep.
And even though my book is not fiction, I was inspired by fictional writing.
Yep.
Because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to tell a story that sticks, because what is coaching? Telling micro stories that stick. And so for me, that was the beauty of the book, is you told a story that I filled with my head. Yeah.
You want to see something crazy again?
Do you have Stephen King's book right there?
Not only, wait a minute. I lied, Nick. Guys, I did lie today. I said Galloway's book is the only one that I have 2 of. Guys, I keep this book.
Stop.
Because look at, and you want to talk about dog ears. I keep it
on.
Right there. Everybody just saw where I grabbed from, and we didn't plan this. This is the one I keep for me. The one on my shelf is a much more beautiful copy. This is a real old one.
Yeah.
I bought this one. Look at that. I got it for $4.50 at Pike's Market in Seattle. I'd always wanted it. I bought it.
This is crazy, Martin. This is absolutely nuts.
And I sat and read it and just loved it.
It's an amazing book.
So I have 2 copies of this one too, because I got a more. This one, guys, was tough because look how small that print is on this tiny. See how small it is in my hands.
Yeah.
But I keep it right there on my desk because I really loved it. Now, I'm not telling everybody they got to go read that, because it's actually scary in his life. And
it is. And I actually went on to read It afterwards, just because I wanted to read one of his most famous books, having his narrative in the back of my mind. Now, it is a scary book, absolutely. Yeah. But I think it goes to show that we studied fiction to write, in your case, fiction, and me, a version of it. Yeah, go ahead.
So for everybody listening, guys, this didn't come out of the ether and it was like, oh, wow, we just wrote a book. This was years and years and years and years of research and passion. What I hold in my hand is probably 20, 30 years of knowledge, discovery, experience. Then it was actually the process of trying to learn how to write and trying to learn how to present our ideas, make it practical. And then you got to get a publisher, and then you got to get somebody to believe in it, and then you got to edit. So I just hope, and I'm just saying that, guys, not to impress anybody, but impress upon anybody that, guys, for 40, $50, you can have our last 50 years of combined knowledge. So
I'm getting older by the minute.
Hey, actually, what's really cool too is when you go on Amazon,
they're together.
It'll tell you what books are frequently bought together, and they'll put them as a package. So if anybody is listening, you need to go buy those 2 books.
And I have to tell you, I remember when you first told me about, first of all, the title was going to be different. And I love, because the title originally was going to be, a cup of coffee and a bag of peanuts, right?
Yeah,
that was the original.
And they shot that down.
Well, I love Coach to Coach. I do, because that's you, man. That is you through and through. But what's interesting is when you told me about that, I think I said to you, I use a lot of story in my book. And even though, I couldn't have written my book in the way that you did, but interestingly enough, the way you wrote your book just screamed at me in such a beautiful way, because it connected with how I wanted. So I want to tell you this. I was invited to write a chapter for high performance training, David Joyce and Dan Lewinden's book, their second edition. And I got to send you this, but I wrote the entire chapter as a fiction. I wrote the entire chapter as a fiction, and I wrote it about the journey of this young high school soccer player who goes into college, and she's not sure if she wants to be a strength coach or a PT. And so she has this injury in high school, and she has these 2 individuals, her high school strength coach and a PT, who bring her out of it. She goes to college, and inevitably she has to pick to do her internships. And she goes back and she does these 2 internships, and the same thing. It's about their experience interacting together. And so I want to thank you for the inspiration of Coach to Coach, because I took a page quite literally out of that book and told, albeit a different story, but in the same stylistic of what you've done and what Patrick Lencioni has done and others, because I think what we're on to, what you've inspired me on, is there are different ways to tell stories that have a real life impact.
Yeah. No, and watch
Fiction
this.
allows us to do something so powerful. It allows us to connect with every individual where they're at and how they want to be connected with, but still underpinned by the same principles. And that's what I think is so amazing about Coach to Coach.
Well, and I'll give you a couple of things why I changed the title, which it goes even deeper, which is cool. But also, and then the first part is, and everybody, you know, Nick, like both of us, we have a story. Everybody has a story. Absolutely. So everybody you work with has a story. You need to know that story, and they need to know your story. And that, again, is where this connection takes place so that you can then use the toolbox. So here would be the example. So if you're a carpenter and you're a great carpenter, but you never get inside the work with anybody, then you never get to use those skills. Yeah. And what happens is people will devour this, but if you're still not a good enough person and they don't care who you are, you never get to use it. But back to Coach, and here's what's interesting. Some people, the story of the book, as you know, is one coach to another coach. Yeah. But notice that it's also Brian to the athlete Marcus. That's Coach to Coach. And it's Brian to his wife. That's Coach to Coach because she's coaching. But then I realized it was this epiphany. Everything in the life, and you'll like this and where these two go together. Before there was the written word, everything was passed through oral history. Yes. Everything was the language of coaching. Yes. And how did it move? From coach to coach. So throughout history, the things that got remembered were passed in the right way with the right cueing from coach to coach. And that is how it's gone throughout history, from father to son, mother to daughter, whatever it is, it's all been passed coach to coach. And that's our responsibility. So who are we now, right? Like I always love to tell this story, another cool one. There was this old man, right, planting a breadfruit tree. And this kid walks up and says, hey, what are you doing, old man? And the guy says, I'm planting a breadfruit tree. And the kid knew something about trees. He goes, breadfruit tree? He said, hey, do you know how long a breadfruit tree takes to produce a breadfruit? And the old man goes, yeah, it takes about 80 years. And then the kid goes, 80 years? Dude, how old are you? And the guy says, well, I'm 80 years old. And he goes, 80 years old? There's no way you're going to live to 160. Why are you planting this tree? You're never going to get it to bear fruit. You're never going to see it bear fruit. And that's when the old man smiled and he said, well, 80 years ago when I was born, there was a breadfruit tree here waiting for me. And so it's my duty to plant one now for somebody coming up in 80 years. And so what are we talking about there is, again, it's this, like, guys, I want also everybody to understand these are these trees that got planted for maybe in some way we'll never see. We don't know every person that's going to use this book or the people that will then have used it or how that will pass and how it'll go. But guys, that's the job of every coach too, is you got to plant some trees you're never going to see and be okay with it because you know your job as being a coach. And again, it's funny, like the more we talk it out, there's just such similarities and synergies.
And I don't know how you feel here. When people start talking about the book, I almost, I say, listen, my name is on the cover, but I represent many. I represent all that are acknowledged and all that should have been acknowledged. And I know you feel the same about your book, but I share it this way, that my book is a story. And it's a story, and I use the kind of the fable type language that I want passed down because it's not just my story. It's the story of every single coach. I'm just the first one to tell it, but it's equally your story. And I hope you own it and tell it to the next person because ultimately this is the story that we need to start passing back around that campfire. And it's not that the other stories on what we do in program design are bad. No, they're fantastic stories. We need them. We need to share them. But there are other stories that needed to be told. And the time has come for this story to be shared as loudly as you and I are trying to share it. So,
yeah. Well, you know what the big word is too, guys? And guys, Nick and I talking about all the stuff we did or the books we wrote or whatever else, it means one thing, which is kind of scary. I know we don't want to admit. Hey, man, we're getting old, right? Like, we've been doing this a long time. I think sometimes people forget that, and you know, I think at the end, when you start realizing you've been doing something a long time, you say, well, what's my contribution? Or did my work matter? You know, did it make a difference? And again, I'll say this, where my heart came from for this one is, if it could help one kid get a like high five from a coach or a mom or a dad, and it changed their life, the book did its job. If it could do it for thousands of people so they never forget why they're doing what they're doing and the responsibility they have if they're going to dare to call themselves a coach, it does it. And hey, this is, I would hope, is the same thing, that it's like, hey, there's some kid out there that has this dream. And if his coach read this book and he cued some stuff maybe just the right way at the right time, like that could change everything. And if it did that, even for that one kid, and the kid never knows that the guy read the book or that's where it came from, it doesn't matter. It did its job, you know? And I don't know. It's, you know, I hope everybody listening says, whoa, it's like, these guys are way deeper maybe than I thought. Aren't they a couple of like speed guys, or aren't they a couple of, you know, whatever else? And guys.
With that too.
Yeah, we are. That's the other part too, is like Nick said, and this is important. We are not saying the X's and O's are not important. We are not saying that you shouldn't know anatomy, biomechanics, science, motor learning. But watch this, Nick, the word I'm using now, right, everybody? That's compulsory, baby. Like that means, you know, so understanding when the Olympians do their gymnastics routine, there's the compulsory routine.
Yes,
there's the stuff you just gotta know. Like you gotta be good at all these things or you don't even get to do anything else. So that's compulsory now. You want to study the X's and O's and sports strategy and biomechanics and anatomy, you got to know that. But now, guys, you got to know this too. And so we filled an area that maybe was a little less saturated with what people are talking about, but never think that we're saying that it's not important. Nick and I cut our teeth on it. Without all the research, this book can't happen. But the whole thing is, guys, don't geek out on the research. Now you can read the book and you don't have to, right? Nick just saved you about 5,000 years of reading. If you do that.
You know, it's for me, when we look at this, what we've done and what we're asking people to do, let's be honest though, is not easy. To interrogate this invisible thing that we call communication, it's tough. It's challenging. As Brene Brown talks about, it requires tremendous vulnerability to look at yourself day in, day out, after every session, after every interaction, and say, what did I learn from that? Where was a strength? Can we lock it in? Where was a weakness? Can we turn it into a strength? And iterate one interaction, one session at a time. And what makes it more difficult is when you don't have the language to know what you're doing there, right? This cueing thing. Well, what kind of cues? Well, until we give it words, until we give it life, until we give it a picture, it's very difficult to even know it is there. You feel that it's there, but you don't have the tools to change it. And I think what we've done, or what we're attempting to do, is make the invisible visible. And I believe it was you I heard at a conference say, listen, you see that light up there? You can see it. And we're all like, yeah. But the thing that powers that light, it's called electricity. You can't see it, but you sure as heck know when it's not working. And that's a lot like coaching. What we do is invisible, but we know when it's working and we know when it's not. And I think what we're trying to do is help people be better electricians. How do we make this invisible thing visible to you so you can own the change, own the impact, and move it, as I say, from chance to choice? I believe that's what we're trying to do here. And that's most certainly the contribution and legacy I want to leave in our community.
No, I love it. Well, and taking that analogy, guys, the analog, going analog chapter in Nick's book.
Chapter 6, yes.
But using that analogy of electricity, here's another place to take, again, which will remind everybody here, right? Hey, guys, but if you channel that electricity wrong, or you mishandle it, or use it unwisely, it can be very dangerous. It can be very destructive. Actually, it can ruin a life. And so we are not only channeling it, we're making sure, guys, that everybody never forgets for a second the power behind it, right? Like you wouldn't go wet your fingers and touch an exposed light switch. We understand that power, but yet that same person will go and tell their kid they're nothing, or try to motivate them with negative reinforcement, or just, either cue or say something the same way that somebody was doing it 20 or 30 years ago. So here's another great example. And Nick can attest to this. Hey, Nick, even in our last 20 years, has sports performance training changed?
Not a whole lot.
How about this? Has concussion protocols changed?
No, most certainly.
Yeah. So there are. How about nutrition? Is there for athletes? Has that changed?
I think it's evolved for sure.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, and he just said it too. If these things can evolve and we're on board with them, then guys, then the how, not just the what, should evolve too. Absolutely. Right? And that's what we're pushing forward here. And again, we're just making a case for it, which I think is interesting. But I hope today everybody listening has had a few epiphanies, like, oh my gosh, I remember this coach. Yeah, this person, what they did, or man, they were like, man, they didn't know how to use the electricity right. Wish they would have, right? And hopefully everybody takes it as a challenge that then, hey, don't repeat that same mistake then, right? Don't become the coach you had that you actually hate, right? Because it's interesting.
And I think in the spirit of what we've done here, you can read all the books you want, and you most certainly need to get out and apply, but having more conversations on coaching and taking a deep look at it like we've done today. So, Martin, we're up against our time, man. You have been explosive, even from across the pond. I don't know about everyone else. I'm going to go on a 10-mile run right now just to take the electricity you shot through this screen. But hey, tell everyone where they can find out a little bit more about you, what you're about, what you do, and where to get the book.
Yeah. So, hey, guys, you can find me where everybody finds everybody. So I'm on Instagram at the Martin Rooney, Facebook, I'm Martin Rooney, but you can check out either trainingforwarriors.com or coachinggreatness.com. I've got some blogs there. I have a podcast called Into the Roar, and that one, if you're looking for a little motivation or a little more fire, you will definitely find it there. And guys, there's no better place than to go to Amazon.com. If you type in either one of these, the other one is going to pop up, which is actually pretty neat that Amazon has identified the similarities, because that's not something Nick or I did, and yet, boom, that's what happens. But guys, I couldn't not only recommend it more, but again, almost where we started today, we've all been pushed inside, and we're starting to see the end of the light at the tunnel, and you're going to have a choice who you become when we emerge from this. And every moment like that you can imagine now that we understand in coaching, down to every cue, could make the biggest difference. Hey, what you're reading right now and how you're growing yourself, that's going to also decide who you become when this is over. And I hope, if nothing else, like I told you today, we were going to be positive and we were going to challenge you. I hope you've been challenged a little bit that, hey man, I could do more. There's somebody that I could help. There's a bigger contribution I could make. And that we all emerge from this thing safe, sound, but better than when we went into it, right? Because as we said today, there is a silver lining, and man, I hope everybody's not only looking for it, but that you find it.
Absolutely. So to everyone that joined us on Zoom, that everyone is still watching on Facebook, and for everyone who will watch on YouTube, thank you so much. Stay strong, stay safe. And Mr. Martin Rooney, someone who takes people from where they are to where they want to go. You are the world's coach. Thank you so much, brother.
Right back at you.
Soon. Stay safe. Cheers, my man.